Hi everyone. Today we have with us Dr. Hernán Bejarano. He is a very good friend of mine. We went to graduate school together, and I still remember sitting with him and another very successful friend and colleague and telling them that they cannot ask me difficult questions during my PhD defense. Hernán, do you remember that conversation?
Yes, I do remember that conversation. And I even have transferred that advice to some of my students.
Thank you so much for joining us for this conversation. My first question to you is could you tell us a little bit about yourself, including a fun fact?
Okay. I don't know if it is fun, but the fact that some people don't know is like I was the altar boy to the previous pope. And the fan is like I'm from Argentina. So we live probably in an unorganized, non-experimental experiment. Everybody think that we are like kind of an econ experiment. My country is like an econ experiment, but it's it's designed by a mad scientist. So I think that that's where the seed of my passion for economics and experiments come from.
Awesome, awesome. And where are you based out of now for our audience?
Now I'm a professor at CIDE, that is the Center for Economic Research and Education in Mexico City. It's a public university, but very small public university focused on economic research.
Excellent. You touched a little bit upon this already, but what sparked your interest in economics and specifically experimental economics? Was there a particular moment, a person, or an experience that really
I
drew
will
you
say
to
that
this
for
field?
economics, there was a moment, and for experiments, there was a second moment. For economics, I was during the summer, my mother used to have a store in another city, not the city where I am from, that is Buenos Aires, but she used to have a store in a beach town. And then I used to be a newspaper boy there, and hyperinflation came up. So what originally was going to be the income for my elementary school graduation trip ended up being kind of like the money which we survived during some days when my mom's store was not doing well.
Mhm.
So then I recognized the importance of economics and economics institutions for the life of a family and even a young boy as I was then. And I decided that I wanted to understand more how these things like hyperinflation happen.
That's
Uh,
right.
that was how I decided to be an economist when I was 11 years old, something like that.
And what
Uh,
about experimental economics?
so I was a postgraduate student at the Universidad Torcuato de Tela in Argentina, and I got an email. Oh, these two professors are coming to Argentina to Tucumán. Their names are Marcus Mobius and Tanya Rosenblatt. Now they're at University of Michigan. At the time, they were at Harvard and Wesleyan. And they said like they're going to teach a 1 month long class on research in economics. So we have class every day, like 3 hours a day. And there were several topics. There was options, social network, economics research, and experimental economics. And I always was like, even as an undergrad, I always was like kind of motivated by micro models of decision making, but I always have kind of a critical view of them.
Mhm.
Okay, I can solve this exercise, find the Nash equilibrium, find the subgame perfect, blah blah blah. But then how does really relate to real people's decision, no? And in that month that I spent with Marcus and with Tanya, they asked us to do a research proposal. to grade us on the class. And then I started to think how I can use this model as a guideline, but always thinking on collecting people's real decisions
Right.
behind these models. And that's how I got very interested in experimental economics.
Fabulous. And if people don't know, but maybe they already do, Arnan, in my experience, you are the most connected economist I know. So Arnan knows Arnan knows everyone and works with everyone, and I think everyone loves working with you, which is the basically the that's what everyone tells me. So that's awesome. Um, what
You
is one
know
of the
that
what?
that's because of I work with Vernon Smith, no? So the father of experimental economics. That is kind of funny too. Before I met Marcus and Tanya, when Vernon and Kahneman won the Nobel Prize, I saw Vernon with his bow tie and his long hair, and I also I want to be like him.
It's
uh,
great to have role models.
yeah, and then I got to work with him, and I asked him for advices, and he gave me two advices, and I think that they are great advices that I would like to share with the rest of the people. Uh,
Excellent.
because the first advice that he gave me was like read a lot of articles, but do not read as many articles of economics as you read articles of other things. Like read of anything, read of psychology, read novels, but read every day, hours. He does that. No? And a sign of a good economist is like if you read of other things that motivate human behavior.
Wow.
That, that was his first advice. And then when I got to do my postdoc with him, it was like, how will I know if I have a successful or not postdoc? Or if my time here is going to be fruitful. And he told me, if you spend 2 years in a postdoc and you get to know two people with whom you can work well and you can continue working with them and you want to do more than one project, that's a very successful postdoc. He told me. So I will always be in debt with him for those two pieces of advice that he gave me.
I just, yeah, it's fabulous. You know, the first
Mhm.
piece of advice, read in your
Yeah,
discipline, but in
yeah,
other disciplines too, and
yeah,
create those connections in the
yeah,
postdoc, which allows you to have a long-term career. So focus on the moment, but then focus beyond the moment as well.
yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Yeah.
Um, what's one of the most fulfilling aspects of your career and your current professional role?
I I really like to work with self-driven students. I know that sounds like a little bit selfish, but I don't know. Probably culturally we're a little bit different in Argentina, and I always have this advice from my undergrad, like you're adults, you are not kids anymore. I don't have to drive your hand to write or something like that. And then when I got back to Latin America, to Mexico or to Argentina, sometimes I teach temporarily there. I noticed that it's also contingent on I go to very good universities in Latin America to teach, no? But there is always one or two students that are curious. And curiosity is a necessary condition to be self-driven, but it's not a sufficient condition. But if they are curious and they are persistent and they insist until they get some answer, it doesn't mean that it's the right answer or even a correct answer in the right direction. But if they get some answer and they are not satisfied with that answer and they continue their pursuit of knowledge, when I find those people, uh, I feel very happy. I don't know why, but I feel very very happy when I find those people, and it gives me hope.
Of yes, you're
Yeah,
right. It's always nice to have these intellectual interactions with people who are curious, especially early career researchers.
yeah, yeah.
Awesome, awesome. Um, we have all, we all have areas we are working to improve. So,
Mhm.
could you share one of your weaknesses that you are actively addressing or want to address?
Uh, I don't like to write a lot. I like to think a lot. I like to scrabble, like write some things handwritten on the sides of things, stuff like that. But polishing and being to the detail of writing and finding the best words to express myself in a written manner, or the same with programming. Kind of like I don't have as much patience as I should have to improve my writing or my coding skills. Uh, yeah, that's my biggest weakness and the one that I'm trying to work. And thankfully, AI helps in both now.
It's AI, yeah, if we use it responsibly and ethically, then there are, we all cannot do every step of the research process with
Mhm.
same level of efficiency. So if
Yeah.
there are tools along the way which we can use, and now we have those tools,
Mhm.
then
Mhm.
that definitely can get those projects over the
Mhm.
finish line for sure.
Yeah.
Looking back to
Mhm.
your past work and interactions, if you could redo something, what would that be?
Uh, it's it's difficult because I have had some, as I have many friends that you say, and I work with many people. I have sometimes that I've been disappointed or even betrayed, I would say, for some of my colleagues. Uh, so maybe if I think uh, with a very risk-averse attitude, I will say I'm too trusting or too open,
Mhm.
or maybe I should be more clear when I start some of these relationships of what do I expect from them and what I'm willing to give, but also what I'm not going to do. Um, but on the other hand, I don't know. I think that there are risks that you need to take in order to gain with some of those fruitful relationships. No, it's an imperfect it's an imperfect segregation mechanism. So maybe when I was more junior or when I was a PhD student, I should have been more selective with the people from whom I search mentoring. That's what I will I will summarize on that. Like basically, sometimes you get engaged or attracted by the intellectual capacity of a peer or a person or a mentor, but that could not be correspondent with their morals or their values or their quality as a person. Uh, and I think that that's difficult to learn. I don't know if there is a better way to learn than just by experience.
That is a very valuable piece of advice
Yeah,
because we always see the professional aspect of our collaborations, right? But
yeah,
with the professional aspect comes the person who actually is responsible for the collaboration.
yeah,
And it's we have imperfect information,
yeah,
and you have to be in the process to realize that it's going great or be burnt. And then
Hmm.
you can be in a little bit of a sunk cost fallacy kind of a situation where you've invested so much of your
Yeah.
intellectual capacity into a project, and then how can you pull the plug on it?
Yeah. We
Yes.
were talk we were talking about stars and like working bees or something like that, no?
Yeah.
I think I will pick a working bee to a star if the star is a bad person and the working bee is a good person.
Well said. Well said.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I'm discouraging any stars from contacting me or reducing the likelihood of me ever
We don't need the
working with
stars that
them. We
are
can
not
be our
nice.
own stars. How about that?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the work is going to do the talking. We don't have
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Looking ahead,
Yeah.
what do you think are some of the most exciting developments we can expect in the field of experimental economics in the next 10 to 15 years?
I hope that these developments go in at least two or three directions. On one side, I do think that what people call like this like information or data revolution, that basically now a lot of markets and a lot of interactions are being recorded, no? So for example, I have worked on street markets in Latin America mostly, but also I'm guessing that in Africa or in some places in Asia, it is similar that these markets, we have an idea of how they work, but we didn't have any information. And now a lot of these markets have moved to be online. So, and even if we want or we don't, there are records and information and data created by all these transactions. So I do think that one direction in which like experimental economics will improve will be on doing experiments in online markets. Uh, I think that John is working first in Uber, then in Lyft, and now in Walmart, has contributed in that direction.
Friendliest.
Now the part in which like we're going to miss information or we're not going to record information is like how do humans interact in in these markets or like where does like the human part uh, play a big role, no? Still in labor markets, still
Mhm.
in like real estate, still in like the interaction that you have every day with a public servant or with a teacher. I still think that the human to human connection will still be playing a role. And understanding what kind of biases we have, how do we react to sudden shocks, both physiologically, unconsciously, and consciously. I hope that like a combination of experimental methods, like from the lab to the
Right.
field, to mixture of both, will help us to recognize the human factor and its influence in these like interactions.
Mhm.
So I do think that like basically we can experimental economists, we can help in both at the macro level, like helping to analyze these experiments in online markets, where the aggregation of many observations like kind of cancel out the human factor.
Right.
But also we need to go deeper into understanding how being human affect social interactions.
Absolutely. Wonderful. Yeah, that's so interesting. And that's one of the main reasons that I am interested in experimental economics is that part
Mm.
about, seeing that human side to
Yeah.
this social science that deals with human decision making. So excellent.
Yeah.
Looking back, what is something that you wish someone had told you when you were starting out your as a young professional? And I know you have touched upon this a little bit. Anything else
Mm.
to add?
Uh, I wish like more people have would have curbed my expectations regarding recognition or money or something. So basically, I wish more people tell me you are not going to be rich. You are going to get happy if one student tells you that you inspire them or something, but every one student that tell you that 90 are indifferent to you or something like that. So I wish some people have core my expectations when I was getting into the PhD and then into the profession.
Curb Your Enthusiasm. Isn't that a show?
Yeah, yeah. It is a
Or
show.
rather, Curb Your Expectations. Excellent. I know.
Actually, that is an experiment, a behavioral economist that has a book on happiness. Se llama Marcel Bauseus. He's Catalan, but he used to be at Rand Corporation for a while. And I have sometimes lunch with him. Basically, all his book is like how to use prospect theory to be happy, but you can like shift your reference point to have achievable goals.
Wise words. My last
Yeah.
question for you is, are you open to being approached by other researchers to just interact with you or collaborate with you? And if yes, what would be the best way to do that?
Yes, I'm more than open to interact with me and in anything. Like if you want like to know some things of Latin America or Argentina, Mexico, whatever I work on, or if you have ideas or projects that you would like to share, I'm more than open. And the best way I think is like either email or social networks, like either LinkedIn or
Right.
Facebook, whatever. Whenever you find me, just ping me or email me, and I will reply.
And that is true for our audience today. That is very, very true. And as I said, Arnan is very smart and he's very well connected. And to the extent that, his name pops up on slides of, your presentation slides. And I look at it and it's like, is that the same Arnan, my friend Arnan? Why, how did he end up on this project? So it is very, very true. Thank you so much, Arnan, for your time and your being honest about, your professional life and your expectations from the job that you do. Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Yeah. Thank you, Simati. Bye.
Bye bye.